But does the math actually add up? Are enough people really taking these drugs to make a meaningful dent in so many industries? Let's bring in Michael Nedelcovych, TD Cowen Vice President of Equity Research. It's great to have you on, and I'm going to start with that question. Are enough people on these drugs for this to actually meaningfully start to impact companies like Walmart?
Thanks, Morgan. Thanks for having me. Thanks for the question. Stepping back just for a minute, the GLP-1 class of weight loss drugs is poised to really transform the treatment of obesity, and Novo Nordisk is at the tip of the spear of that effort, followed closely, of course, by Eli Lilly. Late last year, we at TD Cowen estimated that the global obesity drug market could reach about $50 billion by 2030, with Novo and Lilly roughly splitting the share of that market. But it's important to note that in that estimate, if you look just at the U.S., that contemplates about 3 million or so people on a weight loss drug in 2030, which represents about 1% or so of the adult population in that year. So while we are very optimistic for the commercial prospects of this drug market, it's probably premature to suggest that uptake of this drug class will reach kind of epidemiologic proportions such that we start to see its effects on other sectors. At least in this decade. It's important to note that, of course, there's another decade to come, we hope, at least. And in that decade, some of the important drugs will probably go generic, and that could boost uptake. It's also important to note that there's a significant amount of uncertainty in forecasting a drug class like this with such a large addressable market.
I mean, I keep hearing that these are expected to be some of the biggest drugs of all time. Why is it premature? Is it because of health insurance constraints and cost constraints? Is it because of supply constraints, which is something we've talked about with a number of folks, including the CEO of Weight Watchers back in August? Is it something else?
Well, it could be one of the biggest drug classes of all time, but in an addressable marketplace that represents roughly half the population of the United States or more, both things can be true. It can be an enormous drug market in terms of sales, and also only reach a level of penetration that is relatively modest when you think about how many millions of people have obesity and overweight.
Okay. So do you buy Novo Nordisk? Do you buy Lilly? And what does it mean for some of the other drug makers, like maybe a Pfizer that's potentially waiting in the wings?
We are recommending both Novo Nordisk and Lilly. I should say that my colleague Steve Scala covers Lilly. Pfizer, I think, obviously has an attempt to enter this market, but it's probably too early to tell. And as I say, we're optimistic on the commercial prospects for the obesity drug market, and we think that it will drive Novo and Lilly in the near and midterm, and their long-term outlook looks positive as well.
Okay, so does that mean that this, especially when you look at GLP-1s, that this is really sort of the key area of growth across the drug industry, or is there something else that you actually like better here?
GLP-1s are very likely to become one of, if not the largest class of drugs in history over the course of time. And that share of revenue will come both from diabetes and obesity, but certainly the growth driver here is obesity, because obesity is really a marketplace in its infancy with significant potential that's been untapped historically, and Novo seems poised to tap it, along with some competitors, of course, Lilly being primary among them.
Okay, one last question for you, and that is, how sticky is this drug usage? And I ask that when you do have a Weight Watchers, or there's certain startups out there like Calibrate that are focused on trying to create off-ramps for the people that go on these drugs once they've realized results. Can that actually happen?
Average treatment duration on a drug like Wegovy is a key question. It's unanswered at this point. We're going to get data from an important and very large trial called SELECT. It's a phase 3 trial that was over 17,000 participants. We'll get those data at AHA in November. That was a 5-year-ish trial, so that'll probably be the first and best look at what an average treatment duration might look like. Our KOLs, some of which we hosted this week at TD Cowen's Therapeutics Conference, think it'll be between 12 and 24 months.